Good day, everyone. Today is another day to be thankful, another chance to appreciate the value of being healthy and alive, another chance to learn how lifestyle can positively impact our health outcome and quality of life. Welcome to another episode of Quality Life, Your Choice. Today we will be talking about one of the topics that is underemphasized in the campaign that is ongoing right now during pandemic. So the title of our topic today is Pandemic Food Repurposing. Before we go ahead, I wanted you to know the difference between pandemic and epidemic. This is just very quick review. That when we say pandemic, this is the outbreak of disease that occurs over a wide geographic area and affects an exceptionally high proportion of the population. So this is a very good example that we are facing in this generation. This is COVID-19 pandemic. Now, when we say epidemic, this means affecting or tending to affect a disproportionately large number of individuals with a population, community, or region at the same time. Now, to give you one kind of epidemic that is happening this time, I showed you in the previous episodes that we've been talking about. Here, the data coming from the World Health Organization. These are the top 5 causes of death worldwide that are also considered as epidemic. So first here is cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease, cancer, diabetes, and stroke. Now, with the recent report that was published by the World Health Organization, you will see there, finally, they have told the public now that you may be susceptible of COVID-19 if you have the non-communicable disease or pre-existing conditions such as, it's the same, high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, heart attack or stroke, and chronic respiratory conditions, and lastly, cancer. Now, if you try to see this in the graph that I'm showing here right now, you will see here that the death rate of COVID-19 patients with pre-existing conditions, the same diseases were listed. All right? So what I'm trying to say here is that the existence of the worldwide epidemic, the non-communicable disease epidemic, is the same thing that is now pointing out to the outcome or clinical outcome of patients who will be infected with COVID-19. So that means if you have heart disease, if you have diabetes, chronic respiratory disease, high blood pressure, cancer, that increases your risk of developing fatality when you get infected with COVID-19. So unfortunately, now we are facing a COVID-19 pandemic in the middle of the long-standing global non-communicable disease epidemic. So this is what's happening right now. So if you try to look at it, in fact, there is this article that came out in the Journal of Epidemiology and Global Health, and this was published in November in 2016. They are actually arguing for a change of terminology to carry serious implications of non-communicable diseases for public health in general. So they know very well, and we know very well, that this is a long-standing, neglected, and underfunded group of conditions, that non-communicable diseases desperately require a renewed sense of focus and political attention. Now, if you try to look at it right now, if the intervention that the government is giving towards mitigation of non-communicable diseases, which are considered already as epidemic, as what we're seeing right now with COVID-19, I would say that the incidence, the prevalence of non-communicable diseases will go down. Now, I will show you here one of the recent release by the New York Times. Now, this was reported by Dr. Darius Mozaffarian during the national report at the White House Conference on Food, Nutrition, and Health just a couple of months ago. Now, it was reported that only 12% of Americans are without high blood pressure. high cholesterol, diabetes, and pre-diabetes. Only 12%, and further, it was reported, the statistics are horrifying. But unlike COVID, they happen gradually enough that people just shrug their shoulders. However, beyond age, these are the biggest risk factors for illness and death from COVID-19. That was the recent report couple of months ago. Now let's go to the Philippines this time. Now, I believe I showed this in the previous episodes that we had. Now, in Manila Times, it was also published, this was in 2018, that 1 in every 4 Filipinos are already hypertensive, seeing that more than 12 million of Filipinos are already hypertensive. Remember, this is risk of fatality when you get infected with COVID-19. But unfortunately, more than half of this hypertensive patient doesn't really know that they have hypertension. And that is according to the survey. Now, another data here. 1 in every 5 Filipinos are already diabetic or pre-diabetic. Now, this is according to the study that was conducted during the 7th National Nutrition and Health Survey in 2008. That study was conducted in 2008, and that's why right now it is projected that from 6.3 million diabetics in the national population, it is projected to go up to about 7.8% in 2025. So that means 1 in every 5 Filipinos is diabetic, 1 in every 4 Filipinos is diabetic, 1 in every 13 Filipinas has the tendency to have breast cancer. All of this poses the risk of developing fatality whenever we get infected with the current COVID-19. Now, looking again at the top 10 causes of death, you will see in your screen right now, these are the top 10 causes of death in the Philippines basing on the data of the National Statistics Office. You can find there this same report published by the World Health Organization. These are the same pre-existing conditions that increases your risk of dying when you get infected with COVID-19. Just a review here. The same in our statistics, the top 5 killer diseases in the Philippines are the same top 5 pre-existing conditions that will determine your health outcome whenever you get infected with COVID-19. What am I trying to emphasize here is that in the presence of non-communicable disease, your risk of dying of COVID-19 is very high. Now, here, we are trying to emphasize one more thing here. Scientists, researchers are trying to find out this time that this virus can be here to stay. That means just because of the mutation that's happening, the mutation that's happening in one body to another body, one race to another race, they are seeing now that COVID-19 might be here to stay. So that means each of us may face the virus. We don't know when, we don't know where, we don't know how. The only means and the only thing that we can do is to get ourselves ready, our body ready, so that when we get contact with the virus, our body just know what to do with it. So the key here is that in the presence of non-communicable disease, our risk of getting the infection and developing a high-risk fatality condition is higher. And I hope that is clear. Now, I have one question here. And I want you to see this in your screen. One question is that, what if non-communicable disease prevalence was low? What if this is low? I personally believe that whenever you get contact with COVID-19, most of us will have a symptomatic stage. Or perhaps, even if you get infected, you may be developing symptomatic stage, which is flu-like symptom. And we would have prevented developing or progressing into critical stage. Now, you will see in your screen now that when you say stages of COVID-19, we have the yellow, the orange, and the red. mutation that's happening in one body to another body, one race to another race, they are seeing now that COVID-19 might be here to stay. So that means each of us may face the virus. We don't know when, we don't know where, we don't know how. The only means and the only thing that we can do is to get ourselves ready, our body ready, so that when we get contact with the virus, our body just know what to do with it. So the key here is that in the presence of non-communicable disease, our risk of getting the infection and developing a high-risk fatality condition is higher. And I hope that is clear. Now, I have one question here. And I want you to see this in your screen. One question is that, what if non-communicable disease prevalence was low? What if this is low? I personally believe that whenever you get contact with COVID-19, most of us will have a symptomatic stage. Or perhaps, even if you get infected, you may be developing symptomatic stage, which is flu-like symptom. And we would have prevented developing or progressing into critical stage. Now, you will see in your screen now that when you say stages of COVID-19, we have the yellow, the orange, and the red. When you say yellow, these are patients that are asymptomatic. They are infected with the virus, but they don't feel anything. Their immune system is good enough in giving the response of battling with COVID-19. Some patients may develop flu-like symptoms, right? And then other patients would progress to developing critical condition. Remember, again, those patients who will progress to developing critical conditions, as here reported by the World Health Organization, are those who have high blood pressure. I keep repeating this: diabetes, heart disease, stroke, chronic respiratory conditions, and cancer. Okay? Now here, in the guidelines that was given by the World Health Organization as well, it says there, if you have pre-existing conditions, we have here, just continue taking your medications and follow medical advice. And then do not go out unless essential. Example, for medical care. Of course, we have to maintain distance from others. Of course, you have to wash your hands with soap and water and observe social distancing, and then avoid touching your eyes and nose. But we will be focusing in this last guideline that was given. It says here, maintain healthy lifestyle by eating healthy diet, staying active, quitting smoking, avoiding alcohol, getting enough sleep, and safeguarding your mental health. Now, here, this is another report from the World Health Organization. Clearly, it says there, non-communicable diseases has modifiable risk factors. These are behaviors that we can modify so that we can reduce and control non-communicable diseases. It says physical inactivity, tobacco use, alcohol use, and unhealthy diet. We will be focusing on this part of the guideline, which is unhealthy diet. That's why we will be talking about pandemic food repurposing. Now, we know very well and we have established that unhealthy diet is a modifiable risk factor for non-communicable disease, right? And so, therefore, unhealthy diet contributes to risk of communicable disease fatality. And so right now, we will be talking about repurposing food. All right? So what do we mean by repurposing food? This means modifying your risk for non-communicable disease and modifying a risk for communicable disease. Now, we know that people now are eating just because they are hungry, right? A lot of people are buying food because they're afraid of getting hungry, more than health purposes, okay? So that's why in this time of pandemic, we will be talking about repurposing our food. Let me show you here in your screen. What you can see there is the RX sign, right? Now, in all prescription pads of doctors that you will receive after visiting the clinic, you will receive our prescription pad with the RX sign. Did you know that the origin of RX sign is recipe? Okay? So, you know, by history, doctors before are preparing the medicine themselves. You know, so they prepare the medicine themselves and then they give it to patients. And so it was called the recipe. And then eventually they realize that it's really taxing for the doctors to do the diagnosis, see patients, and then prepare the medicine for the patients. Now they started using pharmacists, you know, to create the drug and then or the medicine and give it to patients. So this time the doctor will provide the recipe to the pharmacist, and the pharmacist will prepare the medicine, usually using mortar and pestle, no? And then they use those raw materials and then create the medicine and give it to the patient. Now, in this generation, what's happening is that all of the drugs and all of the medicines are provided industrially. Okay, they are manufactured industrially, and so right now pharmacies are just dispensing the drugs. Now, let us apply this in repurposing of food. So here in my personal practice, usually I would give a patient a prescription pad that looks like this. Okay, so I may give a medicine for my patient for diabetes. Say, for example, this is a drug for diabetes type 2, and I would ask my patient to take this 1 tablet a day after breakfast for 30 days. But then I use another prescription. Now, this prescription pad entails same letters, which is RX, but in this symbol, I am trying to emphasize here the repurposing of food. And this is using recipe and using food as medicine. Okay, so as you can see here, this is another prescription that I usually give my patients, and it says there, leafy green vegetables, 1 to 2 cups each meal for 30 days. All right, so here what we mean by repurposing food is that using these whole foods, and that we should consider eating to live and not just to eat because you're hungry. Okay? One should eat to live and not live to eat. And this is one purpose, repurposing, thinking of food as medicine this time. Thinking about the oxidative stress that may be produced whenever we eat certain types of food. And then thinking about the modulation of our immune system whenever we consume a food. In this time of pandemic, this is the best time to think, and this is the best time to plan out what kind of food are we supposed to eat. Now I understand that many of you right now has restrictions in terms of food availability. But as much as you can, if you can reach these types of food that we are going to discuss next, you have to do everything you can to put them in your table. All right? So here, basically, non-communicable diseases. These are chronic diseases that cannot be easily halted if we only rely with the modern medicine that we are giving the patients. Because these are largely lifestyle-related diseases, and so they require that we get involved. It needs the involvement of the patient. Chronic diseases, therefore, are not easily prevented or reversed by medications because they need the patient's collaboration. But on the other hand, the application of simple diet, we call this food as grown, especially when augmented by a daily exercise program, have clearly demonstrated that many of these killer diseases are preventable and some are even reversible. Unfortunately, with the food revolution in the Philippines right now, food we eat now isn't the same anymore than they are many years ago. Back then, Filipinos is mostly whole food, plant-based eater, mostly coming from the local garden nearby their farm. Okay? But times have changed. People then didn't have over 40,000 packaged products available in the grocery store where you can choose from left and right, front and back, or the presence of thousands of fast food restaurants that can give us the easier food that can be available anytime we need them. Families on those days, they set their own table, enjoying their own freshly cooked food. But again, taste have changed. Today, many people spend money for eating out or taking food out. Now, our own food is now heavily laden with chemicals and antibiotics. Now, let me share you this classification of foods here. This is the NOVA classification of food. This may give us a guide on the food choices, on the things that we are buying from the grocery store, from the market, for our consumption in the household. Now we have here processed foods. We have here raw foods. We have 4 classifications. First classification is raw and minimally processed food. And if you can see here, this is the green category. If you can stay more here, that would be best. Next is processed culinary ingredients. Now this includes oil, this includes soy sauce, so on and so forth. And then category 3 are the processed foods. Example of this are the canned goods, cheese, the bread, the fermented products. These are processed foods. And lastly, category 4 are the ultra processed foods and drinks. Now this includes your chips, this includes your soft drink, bars, so on and so forth. Now, the general rule here is that the more whole food you eat, the better. Get rid or avoid as much as you can, or make it the least of your choice for processed food and ultra processed food. Because these whole foods, we call them food as grown. They are nutritionally balanced, they build our bodies, they help prevent modern diseases, and they restore health. These whole foods don't need nutritional label. Okay, remember, when you buy your eggplant, when you buy your cabbage, you don't really find their nutritional facts because nothing is taken, nothing was added. Now, you will also see there that almost half of our modern supply of processed food today are called empty calories. That means they lack nutrient value. They only get calories. Now here, let me share you some slides here taken from Complete Health Improvement Program, or we call it CHIP. Whole plant-based food has been linked to the following. First, it lengthens lifespan. Second, it is consistent with extra weight loss. Third, this is consistent with lowering of cholesterol. Next, this will prevent and this will help in the prevention and reversal of heart disease. Next, this will help and assist the prevention and reversal of high blood pressure. And the next, this will prevent and reverse type 2 diabetes. This is also used for treatment of acid reflux. Whole food plant-based diet is also linked with helping constipation, hemorrhoids, and diverticulosis. And then it is also linked with helping lessen asthma. And lastly, this is also linked in helping people with kidney disease. Let me bring back the figure I showed you earlier. Now, this is saying that whole food, plant-based diet consumption, repurposing your food this time as medicine, thinking and getting a mindset that eating food should be a medicine. That whenever you eat and you create a landscape on your plate, it should be providing you the nutrients, the macronutrients, essential nutrients needed for your body to become a medicine. Right? So here, those are the same diseases that will be helped to prevent dying from COVID-19, to prevent having a critical condition whenever we get infected with COVID-19. In short, we have to prevent existence of non-communicable disease so that we can also prevent fatality in COVID-19 infection. Okay, so again, when you say unrefined whole foods, these are food as grown. These are natural food. These are whole food, plant-based food, which is focusing on fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, including beans and peas. Now, when you say unrefined food, these are the good variety. These are foods that you can eat freely. You don't have to worry about calories and the serving sizes because it's virtually impossible to overeat calorically on these foods. Why? Because they are rich in fibers. You easily get satiety. You easily get full when you eat this whole food plant-based variety. They are free of cholesterol because cholesterol can only be found in animal products. And just imagine, when you eat whole food plant-based diet, you can eat all you want, you feel full, and you have excellent nutrition without worrying calories at all. Now, these foods should be the center of your plate. Start repurposing food. Start it with landscaping on your plate. Think that every time you eat, anything you put in your plate, make sure there is something right there that will provide you the nutrients that will help you boost your immune system, lessen the risk of developing non-communicable diseases. Okay, so just to give you a very brief background on what's happening in the current diet that we have right now, just a comparison of the modern and the optimal diet that we're supposed to take. Now, in this generation, people are consuming about 120 or about 80 grams of fats and oils. Ideally, we're only supposed to consume less than 40 grams. Now, in terms of sugar, people now are consuming about 30 to 40 teaspoons of sugar coming from beverages, coming from refined foods that we eat. In fact, optimally, we should only consume less than teaspoons of this coming from good sources, of course, of sugar. Now, what you can see here, people now are consuming more cholesterol, over 400 grams of cholesterol. In fact, what we need is about 50 milligrams. If we can lessen this, it's much better. How about sodium? It's the same thing. People are consuming too much sodium. However, people are consuming less of the fiber just because we're consuming much of refined carbohydrates. And of course, hydration right now, taking plain water is really lessening just because people are used to drinking fruit juices, drinking formulated beverages, sugary-laden beverages. Now, I wanted to present here one of the study, and this is one of the famous Adventist health study that was conducted. Now, you will find there, this are a group of people from Northern America and Canada, and then these people are actually placed into study. And this study found out that 48% of Seventh-day Adventists in this particular place, 48% of them are non-vegetarian, and then 6% of them are semi-vegetarian, 10% of them are pesco-vegetarian. When you say pesco-vegetarian, they eat fish, they eat egg, and then they have the dairy products. And then 28% of them are lacto-ovo-vegetarian. That means they eat only vegetables, but they also add dairy products and then egg. And then unfortunately, only 8% of them are total vegetarian. So, and then, sadly, this 8% who are total vegetarian, some of them are junk vegans. You know, they eat processed food most of the time instead of the whole food plant-based diet. That's why you will see here, then according to this research, those Adventist women who are non-vegetarian are carrying an extra 39 pounds of weight. And then for male, they are carrying extra 31 pounds of weight compared to those who are total vegetarian. Now, I want to emphasize here that excess weight, in fact, we know that this will promote chronic low-grade inflammation. And chronic low-grade inflammation will in turn promote development of type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and cancer. Remember, these are the same risk factors that increases your risk of developing fatality whenever you get infected with the current COVID-19. Now, going back in the study, you will see here that those who are non-vegetarians has the highest rate and risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to total vegetarian. Same with hypertension. Those who are non-vegetarian has about 19% risk of developing hypertension compared to 5% to those who are total vegetarian. You might ask me why these total vegetarian are still having 5% risk of having hypertension. Like I said earlier, those total vegans, some of them are actually junk vegans. They still eat saturated foods coming from processed vegan substitutes, vegan meat substitutes, okay? And then it's the same thing with cholesterol. Those who are non-vegetarian also has the highest risk of having high cholesterol, and same is true with heart disease. Now, here, basically, we are telling you that the repurposing diet is important. Whole food plant-based diet is our basis. We showed you here researches that are telling us that consuming this food will provide us the nutrients that we need to prevent the development of non-communicable diseases and help us get rid of developing fatality whenever we get infected with COVID-19, because we wouldn't know when, we wouldn't know how, we wouldn't know where. It could be there anytime, okay? And so, I'd like to share you here one of the passage, and this is found in Counsels on Diet and Foods. This is part of an adequate diet. It says there, grains, fruits, nuts, and vegetables constitute the diet chosen for us by our Creator. These foods, prepared in as simple and natural manner as possible, are the most healthful and nourishing. They impart a strength, a power on endurance, and a vigor of intellect that are not afforded by a more complex and stimulating diet. My question here is that, what do you usually have for breakfast? How does your plate looks like during your breakfast? And then lastly, what is your staple food in the house? What is your preferred food preparation in the house? Is it food that will provide you medicine, or is it food that will somehow require you a medicine? In the next episode that we will be talking further and in detail about food preparation. How do you repurpose food as medicine? How can you enhance food to provide you antioxidant components? How do you prepare your food to preserve antioxidants? And what type of cooking methods are best to preserve plant food active constituents that will benefit each cell in our body? Always remember that living a healthy lifestyle is the cheapest way to provide yourself the best medical health care. Consider taking your baby steps towards a healthy behavior change, because having a disease can lead to a crisis and a possible disaster. I am Dr. Michelle Acero Palma, and see you in our next episode, Quality Life, Your Choice.